Hello Internet, I'm Jackie Fox, continuing my series of reviewing each element and every unit in it in under 30 minutes. Let's start today with lightning. We're going to be getting Viga soon. And Viga is, in my opinion, a pretty cool unit. It's kind of unfortunate that Earth is so strong right now, because I think if that weren't the case, and also maybe if he weren't an Axe unit, because that's going to give him some issues, he would be really quite good, because he gets quite a bit of lightning attack up, acquired AP up quite a bit, HP and single target resistance are both quite good defensively, so good offensive and defensive off of that stuff. Slash attack resistance penetration on attack. This isn't huge, but when you stack these two together, actually, we're somewhere in the range of Führer's Wrath, which isn't bad and does lend to this being a good tank buster. A 70% physical damage 3 times barrier is nothing to sneeze at, although not being able to take advantage or defend yourself against magic is not great. I'm not sure how many times he's going to be able to take damage to get this modifier up super high, but that's kind of cool, and it has guaranteed hit, which is just not bad, and will be decreasing their defense by 25 as well, so that's going to supplement the defense penetration. And then he has the ability to increase slash attack resistance penetration, auto revive, strike and magic resistance as well. He can also get rid of auto revive with 100% hit chance. So this is very much like Bradley's Helm Splitter, except that it's on an AoE instead of a single target, which is interesting. If it was good on Bradley, why not be good here? Also has the ability to get courage, so this guy could do courage and re-raise, much like units like Cezanne. So that's kind of interesting as well. It looks like he has good survivability. And then also AoE Berserk, which is pretty cool. There is a way to lean into maybe a higher faith build for this guy, especially if you're trying to stubbornly fight physical with him, which seems to be what he's for. You could probably lean into that and have a pretty effective unit all around. Viga is a unit that I find quite exciting offensively. And then defensively, I find Alphonse to be quite exciting, especially if you're building strike teams, especially if you've built Tifa and Edward, because you throw this guy up front on defense in Guild Wars, and you are going to punish the hell out of all of those Bradleys and Lightning teams. Bradleys and Earth teams that are going to try to take advantage of this guy right here. He does fall pretty easily to Earth, unfortunately, so I'm sorry, not to Earth, to magic, so a unit like Queen Macherie could be really tough for him, but oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, does this guy have a lot of really great tank stuff. I mean, elemental chain resistance, AoE resistance, slash attack resistance, and he can dispel protect. He has a really strong physical barrier, although worth pointing out here that it's not as strong as Viga's. But also pointing out here, 50% defense penetration for 3 turns. He's not a DPS by any means. He's not even a very super strong unit, but that's pretty cool. Also, being able to get this effect, even for 1 turn on a damage move. This is Sentinel without loss of evasion, but with damage. It can also hit multiple panels, and it has a pretty good mod. I'm just saying, this guy can do a lot defensively and still screw with people. He has a guaranteed hit attack too. Not the unit that you want against evasion, at least not all by himself. He's not super accurate like most evasion like most lightning characters tend to lack quite a bit in accuracy, which is why the guaranteed hit on him is Much appreciated. Slime is a very special character. He was the free unit for the Dragon Quest. He is the only other normal rarity 20 cost unit in the game other than regular Waters is on. Probably won't be getting a 140 for quite some time, but he can revive people. He can apply a really big heal, a very wide range of effect agility buff, which is really awesome for him. He can attack in lightning and fire for whatever reason. So in a lot of ways, he is like a normal cost monk, if you can wrap your head around it. I think of him as a strike unit. And he also has the strange ability to equip all equipment and basically classify himself as all job types, I think, for job VCs. So pretty interesting unit, not super overpowered, but what he does is very beneficial in limited when you want him to do it. Summer Helena does a lot of damage. She's a 100 cost limited unit. She is a very powerful mage. Also a glove unit for glove card synergies if you're trying to do that kind of thing. I believe she has courage as well from one of her sub jobs. Pretty good unit, but also pretty hard to save for, pretty hard to justify spending on, especially since the next time we get summer units, we're going to be getting newer ones and probably following the trend, new 100 cost ones that might be even more impressive than her and Jaden. So, you know, 100 cost limited release units, especially, maybe even especially limited holiday units are really hard to justify telling people to pull for or really count on, but she's pretty strong. She is a lot like Roy Mustang. Maybe not really as accurate, but a lot like Roy Mustang. Lisette is a more physically oriented, pretty well supportive damage dealing strike unit. So think of her as the offensive version of Alphonse in limited cost. She has buffs that can effectively raise your party's strike damage quite a bit, quite rapidly, and she is a completely free and farmable unit, so that's all pretty cool. Lightning is quite a good unit. She isn't very accurate, although hopefully that is getting fixed in her 140. I'm not sure how much that accuracy boost is really going to do for her, but main job, she has both slash and missile attacks, which makes her a bit harder to resist than a lot of other units that don't naturally have access to multiple attack types like that. But teams that use her also lean a lot typically into slash attack resistance penetration, so it can be hard to resist her slash attacks anyways. She can also do follow-up hits. She has a pretty cool barrier as well. She's not necessarily a glass cannon, but she's not bulky at all, so that barrier is really necessary for keeping her in the game long term, but she is also incredibly powerful, and she does have a big AoE that kind of also builds up with that follow-up attack, and she can get up to 30 AP back off of it based on how many opponents are KO'd. The attack is strong as it is, and when you add that follow-up attack, the likelihood of getting 1 or 2 KOs on it is pretty high, so you're just basically giving her AP back, and that can be really powerful, and something that can absolutely destroy the tempo of a game, even if you had an advantage. Resnick is arguably one of the best supports in the game. She is a devout main, which gives her really strong single target heals and buffs, but her LB is also just a really strong, supportive, big boy heal. And then she is also an arithmetician, which can throw her AI off if you don't turn off her offensive moves, because she does get really good offensive moves from that. That are probably super helpful in PvE, but in PvP you want to turn that off so that she's maybe using the instant cast heals. If she runs into evasion, which is often a counter for lightning in general, which isn't very accurate, she can disable people instead. There's a lot of cool options with Resnick. She's a very good girl. Queen was the free Persona 5 unit, probably not going to be seeing her anytime soon, but she would be a good offensive and slightly supportive alternative to Alphonse. She does have a heal. She's a hybrid unit, so she can be built for both magic and attack. Not as much of either of those things as most units, but also high lightning attack, which allows her to attack from multiple attack types, including strike and magic attack. So she is really hard to build good resistances to, and can be, she has good buffs and the ability to heal as well. So she's a pretty well-rounded unit in a lot of ways. And I really enjoy her and can't wait until she gets a 140. I think she's going to be a fun addition to strike teams. Esther is the badass bunny girl. She is more of a DPS that's also really tanky and can function as a tank if you want her to. Very high slash attack resistance penetration, good debuffs, powerful area of attacks, area of effect attacks, and good resistances. Very strong, like piercing resistance especially, but can also build for a lot of specialized resistances. So she can be a really tough unit to get around for physical teams, but absolutely melts to magic. She's also a unit to keep an eye on that is going to be a blind spot for JP. They just don't know how to understand her practically because they haven't really played with her. And I think that she's going to kind of be a little bit of a influencing factor in how the game is going to change compared to the way that it played out in JP for Lightning. So I think that she could be a really powerful combo with a unit like Viga. Renan, look, he's 100 cost. He's strong, but he's just nothing to write home about. He's limited. I'm not telling you not to build him if you pull him, but don't pull for him. Pull for a better unit, and maybe you'll get him along the way. Okay. Abara is a demon, which means that Maneater doesn't work on her. She also has a lot of Maneater herself. She is a magic-based unit, a book-based unit. And she has some pretty devastating debuffs. Also Blade Soul, so barriers and just a bunch of tricky stuff there. She's a pretty good unit for a 100 cost lightning magic unit. Probably one of the preferred lightning 100 cost magic units for a lot of reasons if you don't have someone like Summer Helena. But I think the best magic unit we have yet to get to, and it's not Veln. Veln is the selection quest unit. She's probably one of the more lackluster. She's a Dragoon. That brings a lot of the things that come with being a Dragoon, like good movement across uneven terrain, high critical, decent accuracy, but just not super special. Cloud does a lot of damage, but he also takes a lot of damage quite often. He has good AoE resistance, but single target attacks will absolutely melt him. But he will also melt other things with his single target attacks, which means that Cloud versus Cloud fights are often a challenge for who can deal damage first, and to that effect, Cloud has Ranger Sub, which gives him ranged options, gives him access to Barrage, which can be brutal, and gives him access to Sharpshoot, which can allow him a little bit of backup against evasion. He does have Triple Slash to deal with evasion, but once those things run out, ooh, he's not going to hit an evasive unit. It's just not going to happen. So, you know, he has limited capability against evasion units, but he can be on the right team a counter. The thing is, it's just kind of hard for Lightning to build that team reliably. Charlotte is a little bit outdated, but she is a very versatile tank. She is built primarily for generally magic resistance, but she can be built to be very versatile and give herself a variety of resistances herself, including elemental ones, and she's not even stingy with those. She'll give them to the party. She also has AoE debuffs that can be pretty impactful for a lot of different stats. So she is a really good tempo tank. The thing is, while she has a lot of tempo capability and a lot of cool buffs for herself, she doesn't necessarily have a lot of the survivability that we've come to expect from other units, and especially with Earth becoming stronger, it's going to be harder and harder to play Charlotte into the future without significant upgrades. Silma is kind of generic. She's a red mage. She has some capabilities to be supportive of resistances, to be supportive kind of as a pseudo tank that can maybe more effectively build her own resistances, but also the resistances of those around her. But while, she is a free unit, forgot about that. She can be farmed, but she's a little on the outdated side and not particularly great. Also not particularly accurate, which is a bit of more of an issue for her now. 9S is a really impressive buffer, debuffer style ranged lance unit, which also has access to other damage types as well, being a Nightblade sub, which is going to give him access to Drain Rush, which makes him really effective in PvE lightning chaining teams as well, while also just being a really strong unit on the field. When he gets a 140, I think he's going to be pretty cool again, and he is one of the more overlooked units in the game. I think people be missing him like they're wearing a blindfold. Alim was at one point probably one of the stronger MR units for Lightning other than Salir. She was more of a physical Dragoon. Not really a lot to say about her that I haven't already said about Veln, except that, I don't know, she's not quite as good as Veln, although probably a more valid investment since her power is more appropriate to her cost, even though she is a slightly higher cost than most MR units. Nivlu is a ranger and a time mage. Actually, she's a sniper, but she is a ranged unit, bow type ranged unit. She has really high move from being like a ninja archer, which if you remember what I was talking about with Alaya's lower movement being really good for her as a ranged unit, this is kind of the opposite for Nivlu. It gets her in trouble. She's also a time mage with Quicken, so that is a real feather in her cap. And there are definitely situations where I feel like for a lightning ranged team that can really blitz people and take people out almost instantaneously in PvP situations, which occasionally is a thing, Nivlu can be a critical part of that picture, but that is a pretty niche situation, even if it is a stupidly reliable way to cheese certain PvP content. Skahal is the fucking underdog, just zombie Skahal even, although I think him getting auto courage is really appropriate when you see what led to him getting bodied in story, or at least side story, but he has auto courage. And what this means is that if he starts taking damage at any point when his HP is over 70%, he will proc courage regardless of if they remove courage or not, because they will remove courage before damage is being dealt. The game will check to see if he has over 70 HP. Damage hasn't been dealt yet, so he still has over 70 HP, so it will re-add the courage, even though it will show you on the screen that it was removed, and he will proc that courage and survive that attack. So this, in addition to him being a really strong, a really shockingly strong DPS, and to some degrees tank buster, has meant that if you can keep healing him, another huge factor in Resnic's popularity, because the Resnic Skahal combo is so incredibly powerful, and it has had a big place in the meta for such a long time, mainly because of the popularity of Sephiroth. This is potentially a good way to counter Sephiroth, even though it is a risky proposition to keep Skahal alive for very long. because he is not durable other than that courage. He is courageous, but not tanky. Ravi'is is an evasion tank. I don't think that her buff for increasing her evasion was particularly well thought out, unlike a lot of MR tanks that I do favor. And while she looks like a really cool one on paper and is a really interesting tank in my opinion, maybe to get to 120, I'm just not sure I buy her 140, and I'm not sure that I advise her past, again, 120, maybe 99. I don't know what you want to do, but she's not high on my priorities list. Salir used to be a really strong lightning unit, at least for MR. There's a lot more options now that are cheaper than her, maybe stronger than her. So just kind of a generic black mage that can do some other things and do them well isn't really enough to save her nowadays. Orlandu, the Thunder God Cid, fan favorite, has good resistances, can fare well against maybe lightning physical matchups. Missile and physical matchups. So sometimes this guy can make a good missile counter, maybe even potentially ice counter. He does pretty good damage, has good debuffs, has good buffs. But just generally speaking, as an 80 cost unit, doesn't really keep up with a lot of the like lightnings and Esthers and even Skahals and Resniks that are so popular in lightning these days. But of the second choice units, I would say he's one of the stronger ones. Frederica, also kind of like an Eviloo, is a unit that can be particularly powerful on the right map. In fact, she's probably, potentially at least, part of that combo, depending on what units you have, that's going to be wiping people out really quickly on just from their starting positions on a short range map. But at the same time, she's probably one of the least impressive gunners for lightning, or at least impressive missile potential units for lightning, because of the limited missile units that they get from collaborations, or limited units that have missile attacks that they get from collaborations. Mariluk is a strike unit. She's actually kind of interesting to me. There are at this point quite a few lightning strike units. I'm noticing, I think there's 4 or 5 if you count Slime, and I do. She is a monk main job. She gets chakra, she gets revive, so a lot of those kind of like supportive skills. Crowning chakra, actually, what does this? It has a very large area of effect, so she leans even harder into being more of a support healer type. I guess that's kind of cool, but I feel like she has a lot of competition for that spot, and I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, that's a cool niche to have. I'm not going to knock it. That is a pretty cool niche to have, but it's not a lot going for you, Mariluk. Sir O is a bit of an evasion unit, high critical, samurai, kind of what I said for Seymour, kind of what I've said for a lot of units like that. Rob, you know, a lot of main samurais be that way, but unfortunately, time has not treated the samurai main and its style of arguably weaker evasion. Time has not treated that well. Schutzelt is a pretty interesting unit on paper because he bears a lot of similarity to Cloud. He looks like an MR version of Cloud in a lot of really funny respects. However, he's just not great. I don't really see people using him in Limited, even though he would potentially have a synergy with Cloud. It's just not all there. I don't know. Kind of old and creaky boned unit, I guess you could say. Vadim is a thief. He can help you steal turtles, he can help you steal time, he can probably help you steal hearts, but not really a unit that I know much about, have much play against. He's probably semi-evasive, but runs into some of the same issues as O. Oh, and by the way, about O, his TMR is the Lightning Katana, which is something you can build up with trust runes, and it is a source, an additional source of Maneater, in addition to being a TMR katana, which can free yourself up for maybe more interesting and specialized builds on units like Astrius or Sephiroth. So that's worth noting. And then you have Liarte, who is another limited ranger. She's actually pretty cool. She's got some neat statuses like Charm, Poison, Stop. So pretty impactful statuses potentially. Decent range. And her being a ranged, lower cost unit in limited is really to her benefit. Especially being like status based, because it means that, you know, she doesn't necessarily have to do a lot of damage. She has the land status, and she doesn't have to be super durable because she's trying to stay away from everybody anyways. But also, just to top all this off, she does have full life, so she can kind of run up and return one of your characters to life in one of those fights. It's not something you expect Liarte to be able to do, and she can do it, and it can be really tempo impactful and game changing when it lines up. And there's not a huge downside to that. It's pretty good that she has that capability. So with all that being said, I guess we'll be moving on to some other elements in the next video. So I'll see you in the next one.